Hey guys, Michael here with Conversations with a Recovering Loan Officer, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. And I know I say that every time, but this in particular is the one person I would say is the most special guest I've had.
Wow.
Because he's not only my good friend, but he's also my co-founder of Pre-Approved Me, Matthew Doud. Matthew, taller than me, Doud.
Matthew. Wow. See, that might be the first time you've ever called me that.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes by Matt.
Matt's fine. You know,
You call me Mike, but I go by Michael. So
I know that's true. You can call me. It's right. It's fair. It's only fair.
Yeah. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man. Great to be here. I love it. I feel like we've been talking about you doing a podcast forever, and now I think it's awesome that it's going.
It's really cool. Actually, I was in onboarding yesterday with a new member, and he had said, "Oh, I found you through the podcast."
Oh, perfect.
And he's like, "I love listening to the podcast because I don't feel like you're just pushing your product. You're like talking to people that can really help me."
Yeah.
And that's why I was really interested in talking to you today. I mean, not only because you're, great to talk to, but because I think you have something really unique to bring to the table just due to your background, and not with Pam specifically, but, just,
Yeah.
So give us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you came from and
the whole journey. Well, I just was going to say, I think it's interesting, like in the podcasting I've done, out here, it's funny how people just find you randomly, and it's like, if something you're talking about resonates with them and they want to listen to it, and then, it's cool. It's cool how that works. It's like super random sometimes. Well, so my background, like where do you want to start? I met on the golf course.
Yeah.
I was
a loan officer.
Yeah, you were a loan officer. And see, this was 2009, I think. So you were a little ways into it.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure my stuff out as usual. And was working at your uncle's course, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
To that as a career, which I pretty quickly found out I did not want to make my career because I wanted to enjoy golf. But man, that started something, huh? Like we both had this common interest in several things, right? Golf being one of them.
Yeah.
And then I would call it unconventional way of looking at things, like when it came to business and finances stuff, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a big common thread. And it was easy to talk about that stuff. And then, yeah, kind of worked our way through career stuff. Like we started working together, right? I was in financial services. You were in mortgage.
Yeah, you were doing my insurance for my clients.
Yeah. That was great. I really appreciated that. You helped me out a lot. Just like sending some clients my way and stuff. And I don't know. It depends on what we end up wanting to talk about. But with regard to that career journey, I was always looking for just the right thing that would sort of adequately define me, like in my career. That was a big deal to me for whatever reason. I grew up with a dad as a business owner, small business owner, and sort of this whole inheritance in front of me that I could have just stepped right into, but I never really wanted it, and I tried it out a bunch of different times and one big final time and just realized it wasn't for me, and then I think that left kind of a gap that I felt like I needed to fill. Like, okay, so if I'm not going to do this obvious thing, then what am I going to do? Plus, I didn't really know another way to determine like who I thought I was. My career and vocation felt like the big way to define that. So I was on this big search, So that led me to trying a bunch of different things, which looking back now, I find very helpful. I'm really glad I went on that journey, of trying different stuff, because it created a broad base of like understanding of different things that has helped me in business and in things that I do now. But I'm also glad that it led us to connect. Like really glad, because this has been like other than my golf game, just like I'm 30 years into that now. But like this has been the last, if you include since 2009, really, we started sort of working together in like a connect, in a partner, or not in a partnership way, but in a referral partner sort of way.
Right.
And then about 10 years ago, we started working together for real, like becoming business partners. And it's been, this 10 crazy years, dude.
Yeah, it really has been. It's been a lot of ups and downs for sure.
Yeah.
And
No doubt.
And so you'd mentioned that, you were trying to define yourself through your work, like you were kind of connecting them as, your destiny or your goal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you, like, do you still look at it that way, or are you trying to like break from that mold, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I learned in that whole, diving into that whole area was that it never will work to try to find something external to myself to use that as like what defines me, or to use that to determine if I'm successful, or, you know what I mean? Any of that kind of stuff. And I was looking for all these things on the outside of me. So like my career, certain relationships, that type of thing, to inform my view of myself and how good I felt about myself or whatever. And what I learned was that it's really exactly the opposite. So your identity is in you already, and it's there to be discovered. And it's true no matter what happens, like what circumstances happen. So the truest things about each of us are always true.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. It can't change. We don't always live in it though. Like we don't always live it out. Sometimes, a lot of times we fall away from it. Pressure, circumstances that go against us seemingly, just difficulties, challenges, other people. There's all these variables, that affect us and can cause us to sort of move away from those things that, that we're really meant for, or that we really, that resonate, or that we align with the best. And so then we end up operating in this false sense of ourselves. Right. But I guess the discovery was that if I can understand what's true about me, then I can bring it into any situation. So it matters a lot less what I'm doing. Like I don't have to find just the exact right career. I can know who I am and what I bring to the table, and then apply that wherever I am, wherever I'm working or at home or relationships, it applies everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was like a major light bulb, like hugely significant turning point, and that's affected everything since then. And that we're coming up on 8 years since I first encountered that idea, and it's still a challenge all the time. Like it's still a challenge to stay in that mode, and then I know that we've gotten a chance to dig into it together, and, it's helped you as well. So yeah, I don't know. Like, what is that answering your question? Or
yeah, that's great. Actually, yesterday we were talking on the phone about that book, The Four Agreements, and you'd asked me kind of like for a quick summary before you dove into it.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing now is that you said, you have to continue to remind yourself of that, right? Because you get distracted, or you get like taken away from like your true, identity.
Mm-hmm.
What that is in the book, The Four Agreements, which is such a good book, he describes your entire life is based on a set of agreements that you make with yourself.
Right.
And those agreements can be built on your own, but most of the time there's societal or external people pushing their thoughts or feelings on you, and you make a decision in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you agree with that. And they gave this great story about a mom who got
essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you own that, right, as a part of your identity.
Yeah.
And even if it's not your true self, like you're taking that on.
Right.
And so it's so hard to break from your sort of societal or your like peer group agreements that they make for you. And one time I remember I said something to you, and at the time I had no idea what you meant by this, but I'm looking back on it now. I said, "You're always late, dude." Yeah. Like, oh, Matt, straight to T, Matt, Yeah. And you're, and you're like, I reject that identity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm not going to accept that, right?
I don't accept that identity. And I was just like, what are you even talking about, dude? Yeah, I get it now.
Right. Right. And that's what I was going to say about like with the agreements that we make. Here's another really critical thing that I think it's missed all the time. Usually those agreements are unconscious. Like we don't sit there and be like, oh, this crappy thing just happened to me and I really didn't like it and made me feel this and that and this and the other thing. And now I believe that I'm always going to fail, or I believe that things are always going to go against me, or whatever the belief that we take on from that event, you know, like we don't consciously think through it. If we did, we'd actually be able to process through and find the truth in it and reject the lie. Like what I was trying to do with Ted, you know.
Yep.
That little thing that you said to me, it was like, no, I'm not going to unconsciously just accept that. I'm going to consciously reject it and try to hold on to what I've learned is true about me. Right. Yeah. It's super subtle, and it does take, it takes awareness. First of all, like you have to be aware that this is happening inside of you. And then it has, takes some proactivity to retrain yourself, because, man, our minds are just wired to like create beliefs that we actually make judgments about things, and then we like attach our identities to those beliefs. And that's really problematic, because then if the belief gets challenged, now it's like my existence is being challenged, right? And like I don't want to not exist. That's really what people don't want, I think, at the core levels. They want to be known and be seen and feel like they matter. And if my beliefs are attached so closely to who I am, you can't challenge my belief without challenging who I am. And now we're in a war.
Right. That's faith, right? It's like, it's your beliefs create the beliefs that are so permanently ingrained in you that you believe are true. That's just faith in that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember back in the day? I'm sure, I mean, I kind of read this book every 5 years or so, but 4-Hour Work Week, he challenges people in that book to kind of challenge their beliefs, like societal beliefs on certain things. And one of the things he says in the book is go into a mall and like lay on the ground. You remember that?
No, I don't remember that one. Remind me of that one.
Because he's like,
I love,
he basically is like, go into a mall and lay on the ground and just lay there. He's like, get out of your comfort zone. Don't care about what other people think. Why can't you lay on the ground? You stand on the ground all the time. Just lay on the ground.
Right.
And it like kind of breaks you away from like the laws or the beliefs that you've created about what's normal in this environment. It's
brilliant. I love it. I forgot about that little anecdote, but he's the master at that kind of stuff. Like he took that idea of not accepting societal norms and stuff to the extreme.
Totally.
Yeah. He's done really well with it. That's a foundational philosophy for us, right? I mean, in starting the business and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah, it is. So, I mean, so how do you deal with that, right? So if you've got these beliefs, these laws you kind of wired into your core, that this is how things are, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
The other people are telling you who you are, and you're taking that and you're owning it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you stop that? How do you like find the root cause of who you are?
Yeah, totally. Well, it takes moving out of the rational mind. That's another place where I was really stuck, because, any of us who are like intelligent, sharp people, whatever, who can think through things, we tend to feel like we can think our way through any problem, using our rational mind. And I mean, the rational mind is incredibly valuable, obviously, right? But these things exist. The first time I kind of got a glimpse of what this was about was in Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, that TED Talk, and he draws the 3 circles on the board. Why in the middle, start with why, how, what. But then he says it's also the same pattern in our brain that I think is the limbic system. It sits in the middle, in the center, which is where our belief center, and it's not tied to language. Right? This is his explanation, and I'm just secondhand, reiterating it to you now. I'm not the scientist or whatever, but basically it's kind of like, well, why do you love your wife? Why do you love your girlfriend? It's like, well, she's smart and she's pretty and she's funny, but so are like half a million other people, in your life, whatever. That doesn't really adequately describe that really specific why her and not anybody else. You know what I mean? Because it's difficult to connect that core belief to language. And it's that whole back to, it's not a conscious thing. Like our beliefs lie in our unconscious or subconscious. So we have to figure out how to access it. The common terms now, well, meditation or mindfulness, right? Something that turns on the intuitive mind. I was going to say the irrational. It's not irrational. The intuitive mind, right? Our right brain or whatever, the creative mind, our imagination, the thing that worked really well when we were kids, and then we were kind of taught away from it, and you think of Einstein's quote or his thought that, the intuitive mind is this divine gift and the rational mind is its servant, but we have forgotten the gift and made the servant the master. We're relying too much on our ability to rationally think through things. Okay, so how do you get at it? You gotta, there's really simple exercises. There's really simple things you can do. You got to get kind of quiet, and then start asking questions like, what do I believe to be true that's not actually true? And give yourself space to let your intuitive mind, let your imagination, just whatever kind of comes up, and use your rational mind to sort of observe what your intuitive mind is showing you. It's kind of like going to watching a TV show and your own brain is the show and you're watching it. It also really helps, to think of it as it's a little bit more than just humanistic. There's a spiritual layer to it. And so you're trying to access the other, like there's something outside of us that can inform this a lot better than we can. In my background, it'd be God, right?
Right.
Like Jesus, the spiritual being, his presence, that's what I ultimately believe is the truest way to go, and like the one that's not going to lead you astray. But the important thing is, like, are you accessing something that's benevolent and interested in you and has the ability? So like the presence of love, the presence of truth, like capital T, capital L. And what is it trying to show you? Like your intuitive mind, like the truth is down in there, but you just have to give yourself space to let it come up, because it's usually just kind of buried. And we are really masters at keeping it stuffed down there, right? By being super busy or super distracted or medicated or what, all the ways that we do it, right? So what do I believe, that's true, that's not true? Or a great way to get at it is emotion. So what is the negative emotion that I'm experiencing right now? And usually people can name that pretty easily. I'm frustrated. I am, I'm angry. I'm scared. There's a lot of fear. Fear is at the root of a lot of things. Anyway, whatever it is, okay. So when you feel that way, then go to that identity statement, right? Like, it makes me feel like I am what, or I am not what. And you just kind of work your way through it. So I feel anxious. When I feel anxious, I feel like I am alone and no one's here to help me. Okay, when's the first time you can remember feeling alone that way? And your mind is amazing how this will work, right? Like if someone's listening to this, they could actually be going through this process right now as I'm describing it, right? So what's the main negative emotion that you're dealing with right now? When you experience that emotion, turn it into an identity statement. How does it make you feel about yourself? I am this or I am not that, right? Okay, when's the first time you can remember feeling that way? A lot of times it's going to take you back to something in your childhood. That's just typical. Not always, but it's very common. Definitely, obviously, something in your past. And it's like whatever comes to mind is the right thing. Okay, so it's like now in that situation, what did you begin to believe based on what happened to you that may not actually be true? And how has that affected your life? And then when I take people through this process, which I've done some in, some coaching situations, it's like you can literally see the shift happen in them. Because it's like, wow, I've believed this thing to be true for 20 years or whatever. I had a lady who's 60 years, that she had held on to this belief unknowingly. And it had affected her in all these different ways in her life. And as it was kind of unraveling, she's realizing this thing she had believed in her core wasn't actually true. It started to shift her viewpoint on her entire life and all of these things that had happened to her since then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like the dominoes start to fall, and you can see this sort of release, right? And there's this freedom. It like actually reshapes our perspective on who we are and, the world around us and what's been going on and what it all means. It's really powerful. It's really freeing. And then it's like, okay, well then what's the truth? That's what you want to get to. If this was the lie, then what's actually true? And try to see that, try to receive that thing that's true, and then just hang on to it. You like cling to it, right? When you get into another challenging situation, like cling to the truth, practice it, believe the new thing.
Yeah, make notes like what you hear or what you see, because like when we were with a big group of guys when I did this first time, and we all went through this process of trying to find our, like our true identity. And everybody, what we did is we kind of asked each other, how did you receive the identity? What was it? Describe it to us. And everyone is like completely different. Some people like hear it in music. Some people I saw like an action movie.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool actually. And through that process, like I was able to sort of like understand my true nature. And man, I tell you, it's like you said, it's hard to like hold on to that because you have so many other people seeing their identities on you. Yeah. And so in the book, The Four Agreements, he described this as, so he talks about essentially, it is a religious book. He says that essentially, like, whether you are in alignment with your identity or not is whether you're living in heaven or you're living in hell.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right.
And he says that people who live in hell don't want to be there alone. They want company.
Right.
Misery loves company.
Totally. Yeah.
And so they will force their beliefs and their identities and their victimhood and their on you to bring you to their level.
Yeah.
In hell, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you're not religious, then it's just, call it, in an unhealthy place, right?
Yeah. In a bad space.
A bad,
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. But for me, what's really important is to revisit that process frequently, so that I can realign myself and sort of combat what's coming from the outside.
Yep. That is the huge key in either case, whether you want to exist in heaven or hell. If you want your experience of life to be full of love, joy, peace, et cetera, or angst, fear, strife, whatever. Nobody really wants that, but people do gravitate towards it, right? It's like a defense mechanism or something, or it's just easier. But the company you keep makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. It's almost impossible to stay. Well, it's nearly impossible to stay in the joyful mindset, in that connectedness worldview or whatever by yourself. It's almost always going to devolve into something more negative.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go negative by yourself pretty easily. That's actually like where you can go the most negative, probably, because you just kind of go down your own rabbit hole of despair. It gets scary.
And it's a lot of times it's so deeply rooted in you from, your upper, like you said, your childhood, right? These beliefs, you're indoctrinated into them. You a lot of times don't even have the choice.
Totally.
You're a mosaic of the environment that you grew up in, and your beliefs are created through the big people in your life that you're supposed to respect.
Right.
And if those big people communicate the way they were communicated to by their parents, then it's why, like, culturally, Americans are different than, Chinese people. They're completely different, and like you go to Paris and people work 4 hours a day and they take a 2-hour lunch and and here it's like the grind, got to grind away, and it's all based on those beliefs.
Totally. It's culture. That's culture at its essence,
Yeah.
And we don't, it's hard to recognize, it's like you ask a fish, how's the water? And it's like, what's water?
Right.
He doesn't even realize what water is until you take it out of the water.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I need that, whatever that was. Yes. Yeah. You're right. So it gets like, no matter how good our parents are or like our environment growing up, whatever the circumstances of our upbringing, it's like even in the best case scenario, it's still going to be imperfect. We're still going to receive wounds. We're going to experience trauma. Even like minor traumas can have this similar effect, right? Because they cause us to form these beliefs. Just like it's pretty instantaneous. When we experience something challenging or negative, we usually are pretty quick to like judge it. It's a defense mechanism, fight or flight. It's like our reptilian brain is programmed to keep us away from things that we perceive would harm us. And so we do the stuff automatically. So it takes a conscious effort to overcome it.
The big challenge too that I'm learning is that like humans are the only species on Earth that punishes themselves over and over for the same mistakes. So think of a dog or a cat or whatever, like their punishment is instant, immediate, and it's likely the direct result of them doing something, but then they leave it.
Yeah.
Right.
Huh. Like Goldfish, like Ted Lasso. You've been watching it?
Yeah. It's the great
Goldfish, right?
Totally. Yeah.
10-second memory.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. So, but humans, they have a very long memory. And when you put yourself and you remember an event or an experience that was a negative thing, not only are you remembering it, you're reliving it and you're reinforcing that in your mind.
Totally.
And so thousands of times, that one time your friend in 8th grade told you looked fat.
Yeah.
Now you forever are going to look fat until you find a way to break that agreement.
Totally. And you're going to project into the future. Remember Landmark Forum?
Yes.
They were all about that. Like whatever is in your past that's unresolved, you're projecting into your future. And so you're just reliving the same reality over and over. Yeah. And, this mindfulness thing, and I like in my opinion, what Jesus was talking about and all, any of these people who are trying to get at this like state of higher human function, like better perspective on everything is like in the moment. The past and the future don't even exist.
Yeah.
That's the ideal, right? It's like the moment is where it's at. Life is right now. And so if you have to be able to release the past, you have to be able to like be free of anxiety of the future. Those two are related to each other, So beliefs are a big one. Forgiveness is the other one. And some religions get at this, others don't so much. It doesn't matter. Like you can ask a psychologist, whoever. It's like forgiveness is a huge deal because forgiveness is where we hang on. Unforgiveness is where we hang on to the things, that either we've been wronged and we're like holding the other person accountable, or we've done wrong and we're like not releasing ourselves to move out of it. Right. But in either case, forgiveness is huge. It's really like understanding what that is all about, and the power of it is big, that it's not about saying whatever happened is okay. It's more like saying that I'm canceling the debt. Like I have to leave it behind, right? We're canceling the effect of what happened. There's nothing that can be done about it now. It's been done. It was not good. It hurt me. It hurt others, it whatever. But holding on to it is far worse than usually even the thing itself. It's like, no, let's just like cancel it. And if we can do that for each other, that's huge, and we need to do it within ourselves or, work on that.
Yeah, that's a really hard thing to do though. And the practice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is there anything you can think of, like any like strategies that you've
Yeah.
come up with?
Totally. Yeah. Enlist your imagination again.
Okay.
All right. So who in my life do I need to forgive? Am I holding in unforgiveness? It could be yourself. It could be somebody else. Okay. What do they look like to me? What does that person look like? Imagine them, sometimes they look like kind of mean and nasty, or big and intimidating or whatever. And then it's a good chance to, again, to connect with like the presence of perfect love or, absolute truth. And like, what does this person look like through the eyes of love? And then usually you will see them differently. Like a lot of times you'll see them as a little kid or somebody scared, like hurt, wounded, broken, whatever. You get a different view of them. It's like, okay, how would you treat that person versus this intimidating, angry one or whatever, right? And so you actually get a different image in your mind of who that person is and like why they were treating you the way they were, all that kind of stuff. And again, it just reframes it all. And it makes it much easier to actually do it. You're like, wow, I'm not going to go yell at a little scared, lost 6-year-old, if that's who they really are inside, it changes it. It makes it easier. Like you actually end up with compassion and empathy.
Wow.
It makes you think outside yourself. Also, that's the cool thing is like, it takes your eyes off of my own victimhood and turns it around to like, how can I be like a positive influence in this situation?
Yeah. When victimhood's such a weird topic, like the belief that things happen to you.
Yeah.
And instead of like, what's the reality though? Like, are people manifesting these things? Like, or they just like, that's where they gravitate in their lives? Or is it just how they're interpreting everything?
That's what I think, right? It's like, yeah, things happen. There's nothing that can stop that. It's what does it mean, I think, is where we get stuck, right? If the way that person treated me defines me now I'm the victim of that situation or of their view.
Mm-hmm.
That can be on like a really small micro level. It can be on a really big macro level, and again, none of this stuff is easy. It's easy to talk about. It's way harder to do. It's like you have to want to in the first place. There's some power in hanging on to our own victimhood. We can leverage it, so sometimes it's not that appealing to even let it go.
Huh. How so? Like,
well, I mean, let's try not to get political. Let's just say like in our own lives,
yeah,
it's like you hurt me. And so I'm going to throw that back in your face whenever the scales balance out of my favor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but you did this 3 years ago, And so it's like this continual power struggle back and forth, to like one up the other person or to gain the leverage back. Right. And so if you released that and said, man, I forgive you, I'm never going to bring that up again. That's not going to affect me or our relationship anymore at all forever. Then the next time you want to use it, you can't. So, you know what I'm saying? Like you lost that.
Yeah.
And you're going to be way better off for it. But, you can see where that can be hard to do.
I mean, is it fair to say that like as a person who tends to hold on to that sort of thing, they're living in the past, right? And then they're projecting that into the future.
Yeah.
Instead of living now, right? And, dealing with the things that come to them and just taking them for what they are and letting go of the bad. And
yeah. Yeah. And it's like, there's so many analogies for this, it's like a sunk cost in business. Well, we spent that money, didn't work out, but you can't think about that anymore. You just got to move forward. Like the money in the bank is the money that we have now. Like this is where we're at. Right.
Yep.
Or like pot odds in poker, It's like,
yeah.
You made that bet and it doesn't matter. The money's gone. You can look at the pot odds, but the pot odds are now. Like, you're on the turn or the river. It's like, what is it now? What happened before is now irrelevant.
Putting more money into that pot because you have some money in that pot doesn't actually make sense.
No, right. It's only if it's a good decision now based on what's real right now.
Yeah. You made me miss poker just now.
I know, right? That's
Oh man, I haven't played in so long.
me neither. And yep. So yeah, I mean, you can apply that sort of philosophy all over the place, but yeah,
That's really cool.
yeah,
That's interesting stuff.
yeah. So how does that apply to? Okay, so like, who are we talking to here? Like loan officers,
Yeah.
business people, Okay,
Yeah.
so times are tough, right? Maybe it's a little better, but like this last year has been pretty rocky. So I mean, what do you do with it? Like, what do you think? You're the one you got your finger on the pulse of this one.
What do I do with which part with this, what we've been talking about?
Well, so do you feel like a lot of people in the industry are stuck right now? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, like where are they at?
There are definitely a lot of victims out there, right? A lot of loan officers who feel that the rates are defining their success.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no chance for them to maintain themselves, and it's really sad. Actually, it's really hard to watch because I mean, there's a lot of really good loan officers that I've known for a long time that are just like struggling to get themselves to do the work in their business and on themselves to move past external forces they have no control over.
So here's what that's making me think of, right? Is that really nothing productive can happen until we get out of this self-defensive mode and like the victimhood mentality back into creativity, like the prefrontal cortex, right? And it has to, you think of it almost like a weight. You have to drop anchor, or well, you have to not drop anchor, it's like a boat, but drop like a hot air balloon, right? Like get rid of the things so that you can rise up again. Well, these negative viewpoints and the victimhood mentality and all this kind of stuff is just that. It's like these big sandbags keeping us down, right? So the first step is to eliminate that or get away from it. This has been big for you, getting back into that creative mode.
Yeah.
Right? Because now it's making me think of that book, my favorite book, The 177 Secrets, Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class, where it's like the world class creates, the middle class competes, the world class creates. Well, you can't create if you're not in a creative mind frame.
Right.
And you can't be in a creative mind frame if you're stuck in victimhood and, this defensive, self-protective mode.
I find it like, so it's very counterintuitive based on like my upbringing and based on like my societal, external forces that brought me up. But like oftentimes the best, most productive time I have is when I'm not here in front of my desk. Right. It's the idea. It's like getting out and getting into a state or a place, an environment that allows me to free up that creative mind.
Totally.
And that's when I have an aha moment or come up with an idea that will completely change whatever it is that I'm thinking about. And I have to give myself permission to do that without feeling guilt, because if I feel guilty when I'm out there, I'm not going to reach that state.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're just going to be living in the past or living in some other place, right?
Yep.
Like your body's out there, but your mind's back in your little cubicle.
Right.
I was trying to grind it out.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, so I was thinking, in the mortgage industry and like in a lot of industries, the product itself is pretty much a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not like you have a better mortgage than somebody else, or better rate than somebody else, or better service than somebody else. It's like, that's not really the separator, So what is it? And it's like, it's that uniqueness. It's that identity. It's the you, right? You're the person.
Mm-hmm.
You're the thing that's different than anybody else out there. And like taking time to find that and like how it can show through and what you do. Because there's enough business for everybody, even in kind of a tough market, there's still enough.
Well, especially because no matter how long you and I talk about this, or how many books we recommend, or how many people go through the process of trying to find their identity and free up their creative state, only a small percentage of the people that are in the mortgage industry are going to do it.
Yeah.
And the other ones they're going to go away because they can't
Totally.
For whatever reason, they can't unfortunately move through that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully they'll find, I mean, that's the other answer, like we need to be open to, is that like, I'm no longer really connected to this and I need to go find something else.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
maybe my identity and creativity and everything is like moving me in a different direction. And like, that's okay too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that is okay, right? It's a job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
We're going to go through transitions. You want to be somewhere that's like, you know, exciting at least, or like energizing, I guess, would be, you know, not just showing up just to show up.
It reminded me of something when you were saying like you're dropping a weight from the hot air balloon or whatever, that other audiobook that you sent me that was 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah, that's what, yep. Right.
Yeah, he's like the first like chapter is basically like the kind of the history of how like Michelangelo was, like how he got to who he was, which was
how determined.
Yeah. Your
He
internet
was, yeah.
kind of losing you internet wise.
Yeah. Rose, sorry about that. Yeah.
But in the book, he's like the Pope or something asked him like, how did you do this? How did you create this sculpture? And he said, I just removed everything that wasn't David.
Yeah.
It's like, how many of us are holding on to things that aren't us?
Oh, right. Right.
You know, like that's not Michael. That's not me. Like, get rid of that, get rid of this, you know, and tell your true self is, you know, apparent. And like, how freeing is that, you know, to get to that state?
Yeah. And the art restoration, I know Michelangelo's creating it from scratch, but like, let's say you take one of his sculptures and then it sits somewhere for a few hundred years, you know, and it gets all kind of dingy and soiled or whatever. Well, this finding your true identity is a lot like somebody finding that statue and going in and carefully like removing all of the junk from it, you know, that's not really part of it. It's just the stuff that is accumulated on it.
Yeah.
Right. And that happens to us too, like our spirit, our body, everything. It accumulates scar tissue and junk. And like having that cleaned up and removed through this process is really beneficial, kind of like reveals the true thing that's underneath it.
Yeah. You can't even know, right, until you start pulling those layers off. And a lot of people never seen their true self.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and unless you're like really, really young. I mean, like you see it in children that are like under 4 years old.
Yeah.
How because their brains are not wired to yet accept other people's beliefs in them. They just are moving to their truest self. And it's like, but when parents yell, hey, stop singing, you're annoying me, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden, like okay, my singing annoys people.
Right.
I'm a horrible singer.
Yeah.
I don't want to sing anymore. It's like, you know.
Exactly. Those little things start to build up. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the deal.
Well, that deal sucks. I reject that deal.
I know. That's right. That's why it's like you can be cognizant of it with our own kids, you know. That's hard too. Man, that's like when it's really convicting. It's like, what did I just say? Did I just say? You know, am I helping him form an incorrect belief that's based in fear and shame, you know? It's like, oh.
It's tough. You know, it's tough enough when it's just yourself. And then when you have other people you're responsible for instilling these initial like belief system in them.
Yeah.
Man.
You were talking about cultures and how it gets handed down generation to generation, you know, and like that's the good and the bad hand in hand. And who's it? Richard Rohr has this saying that what doesn't get transformed gets transmitted.
Oh.
So generationally or just relationally between people, you know, it's like if I've got something festering in me, especially if I'm not aware of it and it's just in there, like permeating everything, you know, then it's gonna end up on other people, you know, like
For sure.
It's gross, but that's what happens, and you can see it,
man.
once you start being aware of it. becoming aware of it, it's like you see it everywhere, and it's like, yeah,
Well,
no fun.
I'm going to call that a good stopping point because your internet's going and
Sorry,
that's a lot to chew on, honestly.
right.
Maybe, so like it's a little bit of a different approach, but it understands the technical side of like how these things sort of like how they sort of like become you and like how to sort of deal with it mechanically a little bit better. The Four Agreements, an excellent book.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that. But Matt, I'm sure you've got another couple of recommended pieces of reading or audiobooks that people can look at.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, up and just freezing in my back. The 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class by Steve Seibold is a great book. It's a little daily reader, like 2-page per chapter kind of thing with, mindset shifting. The 4-Hour Work Week, I would say, is right up there.
Yeah. Specifically, if you want to like apply these things to like your business life.
Yeah. But, he goes into all that dreamscaping and all this stuff. It's like, it's really pretty like across the board practical, I think, for anybody.
Yeah.
And then I would actually recommend Living Fearless by Jamie Winship.
Yeah.
Have you read that one yet?
I'm like halfway through it. You and I have been the last week been like sending each other like this book, and I get into like half of it, and then I got to bounce to another one. But yes, I am. I am listening to it. I've met Jamie a few times. You've worked with Jamie in the past. Really cool.
Yeah.
Cool dude, and he talks a lot about this identity exchange stuff.
Yeah. That's their website too, identityexchange.com, if you want to go straight at it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's some good places to start for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Matt. We'll have to do this again. That was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Always good to talk to you.
Matthew Doud, the COO and co-founder of Pre-Approved Me.
Wow.
Look at that. Thanks, dude. I'm sure I'll talk to you again later today.